spoilers, not spoilers, confession, I don't have registration in the car.
Jess, what?
I know. So... Hello, everyone, and welcome back to No Script, an unscripted conversation about theater's best scripts. We are back again today chatting about a script, excited to jump into a conversation. New playwright to me, new playwright to the show, and so I'm excited today to be talking about The Best We Could, A Family Tragedy by Emily Feldman.
I'm really excited for this episode. Emily Feldman is one of my favorite working playwrights. She's one of the people that, and people have occasion to ask me every once in a while who my favorite playwright is. I don't usually say one name. I usually say, probably more than the person actually wants from me. But I will respond with a series of names, and Emily Feldman is in that group. Just an incredible creative mind. I think that Emily Feldman thinks about theater in a way that is really interesting to me, desiring for shows that highlight what theater is. We've often said on the podcast, and I often say in my teaching and work, if you're doing a play that could have been a movie, maybe you just should have made a movie. And Emily Feldman's plays could not have been a movie. Not that the stories couldn't be. I mean, almost all stories could be filmed. But the way she's told the stories are uniquely designed for a live theater experience. The Best We Could is just such an absolutely fantastic example of it. The first time I read this play, it was in preparation for a conversation that I was going to have with Emily Feldman as part of my graduate studies. I had, been able to work out a chance to interview her about her body of work, and so I'd been reading a number of her plays, and this play just shattered me, both for how it sets up what happens and what happens in the course of this play. It inspired me in its brilliant theatricality. I just think Emily Feldman is just a spectacular theater mind. My guess would be, and we've had occasion to make these guesses about other playwrights in the past, that if we were doing this podcast in 10 years, Emily might be in that group that we'd say things like, she's on the most produced playwright in America list this year. I mean, I do think she is certainly that quality of playwright. I don't think that's in question, but also has that unique of a theatrical mind, that kind of notoriety. Does notoriety have a bad connotation? I'm just realizing maybe notoriety is not the
sometimes.
word I want. That kind of popularity.
Yeah.
might be in her future. I just can't rave highly enough. I'm excited to introduce you to Emily a little bit in the context section, and to talk about this play, which is weird and shattering, and also very distinctly an American drama that pulls on the American drama canon.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll chat about that in your context just a little bit, but this is certainly resonant with a lot of family drama. As I kind of said in the title, the subtitle of it being a family tragedy is really particular and evokes things from
we've talked
American
about
theater.
on the podcast, and this is not an idea that is unique to us. Much writing and thinking has been done about this, but really the centerpiece, if you're looking for a core American voice on stage, one of them is the musical. That is, of course, well established. The musical is kind of an American thing, but then also the family play.
Right.
The American straight play canon, I've used canon too often already in this introduction, but the American straight play, a through line, has been family plays about family in crisis, family falling apart, family at each other's throats. And this play is just it's weird because it's in that lineage, of course, but it is also a distinct reference, and it's a distinct pulling on that group of plays in a very particular way.
Yeah. There's a revernacularization happening in this play about kind of telling the story in a 2020s mindset. kind of reimagining the family tragedy in that mindset, and that does really interesting things to the structure of the play. You know, we're not a lot of times family tragedies center on a living room. This play does not do so.
No, this is a road trip play. That's the other thing that's so great about it. There's not a lot of great road trip plays out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
just, you know, honestly, it's hard because it's not, that particular thing is not something that theater's totally excellent at, because of course it requires constant changing of location. I mean, that's literally what a road trip is, right? Every second of a road trip as you're driving, you're, you know, so many yards away from the last place you were, and the last place you were, and the last place you were. And theater is just a little bit better at stagnant locations because just of the limitations of the stage. And so, you know, road trip plays not as common as road trip movies, which is like a whole genre of great road trip movies. And, you know, like, so Approaching Zanzibar is a great road trip play, and there are others, but this is really, it does it by way of minimalism and imagination, right? Which is, you know, maybe the way to handle that on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited for the conversation today.
Does
Excited
Hades Town count as a road trip?
Ooh,
play?
I mean,
poked my
that's
brain.
a journey, maybe. Yeah, I feel like
Well, what's the
road trip-
difference between a
Well,
journey?
maybe I feel like road trip is like maybe inherently car centric.
It has to be a car. Yeah, that
Yeah,
could be.
yeah.
There's a train.
There is a
Could you
train.
road trip on a train. I
It's
don't know.
true. I
It's
don't
interesting.
track trip. No, that
Well,
doesn't
it
work as
sounds
well.
like we're excited to talk about The Best We Could, A Family Tragedy by Emily Feldman. Before we do so, I want to invite you to head on over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/NoScriptPodcast, all one word, no hyphens, no underscores. That's where you can become a supporter of the show. Our patrons are a fantastic collection of folks who make doing the show possible. We love this show. Conversations like this are a delight. But the making of the podcast, especially in the way that we make it, is just not free to do. It requires a monetary investment, and the folks on Patreon make that possible for us. So huge shout out, big thank you to our supporters on Patreon. If that's you, thanks so much. You're making this episode happen, as with all of our episodes. If that's not you yet, if you're not a supporter, we ask you to just consider it. Check out the Patreon page. The lowest tier for us has been, will continue to be $1 a month, $12 over the course of the year. Even at that price point, you are a massive supporter to what we have going on over here. You can check it out. Everybody knows how Patreon works. There's different levels. There's all kinds of, you know, stuff that you can check out and see all the details of it. But the biggest thing is that those folks make doing this show happen. So thank you to them. Check it out if that's not you. Patreon.com/NoScriptPodcast.
And if you are a patron of the show, you may have already seen that we have a themed month coming up. It's the exciting hallmark of the season, one of our favorite traditions. We kind of spend some time over the course of a month talking about plays that are of a theme, and excited to be jumping into that in just 2 short weeks, or 2 more episodes or something like that. In a short amount of time, we'll be jumping into the themed month. So get excited for that, and we'll be making a more public announcement about that coming up. But if you're patrons, you probably already know. So if you're looking for a way to be in the know, a great way to do that, to be in the know about themed months and things like that.
It feels like we could say this themed month, we're doing another playwright month.
Yes.
We've done it in the past in our, what are we in, 16, 15?
Yeah.
14? I forget what season number it is. In many of our themed months, they're around subjects, or they're around particular mechanics, or sometimes we've done lengths or genres or time periods. We've also done a couple of themed months where we just look at plays by a particular playwright. We've done Arthur Miller month, David Henry Hwang month. This time around, that's what we're doing. 4 plays by a very particular, very specific playwright. You'll want to check that out. We will be announcing that name in a couple of weeks. But as Jackson says, patrons already know. If you're following along chronologically, if you listen every week, our themed month this season is April 2026. Themed month coming to you from No Script.
And thank you to all the patrons who make it possible. If you're looking for a way to help out the show, head on over to patreon.com/NoScriptPodcast, and we will see you over there.
And now, back to the script.
Here we go.
Okay, Emily Feldman, new playwright to the podcast. Emily is a New York City-based playwright, has kind of lived all over the country, and that's part of I think the story of her plays is the many different specific voices and communities that she's been part of. She ended up going to Middlebury College in Vermont, and the story goes that she was studying English and writing short stories at the time. And basically, as I think often happens with people who want to be authors and go and study English, they realize that all the fun people are in theater. And that is like essentially the same language that she uses to tell the story. Like, all of her friends were doing theater and having a lot more fun than all of the people writing short stories in the English department. No shade on the English department, but I do think theater people have more fun. And so she ended up trying playwriting instead, working with a mentor, and went on to this incredible thing. Talks about in an interview, I think this is an interview with Will Arbery. She's talking about how, like, one of the magic things about theater was the feeling that she got the first time one of her plays were performed in front of an audience, and that thing that goes on inside of you when the theater event is all coming together for the first time. Really remarkable, and certainly speaks to how she has thought about the theater event, the audience, the imaginative life of the audience as essential to what's going on. She ends up going to UC San Diego to get her MFA in playwriting, and then onward from there to be a playwriting fellow at Juilliard. A huge body of support, of awards, of the great things from an early career. Her play, The Oracle, received the Kennedy Center's Paula Vogel Award. She's been included twice on the Kilroy's list. The Broadway Women's Fund named her one of the 50 women to watch on Broadway. She received a fellowship from the Working Farm at Space on the Writer Farm, P73's I-73, the McDowell Fellowship, the Core Writer Jerome Fellow at the Playwright Center, Two River Theater Emerging Writers Group, the Orchard Project. In 2017 and 18, she was the playwright in residence at Playwrights Horizons. She received the Patty Abramson Prize. According to one version of her bio that I found while I was out and about looking around, she's currently writing a television series for AMC. I mean, so just the beginnings of a really successful, robust early career. Really, I said this in the intro, but I'm really excited to see what happens in like the next decade, and to come back and revisit this episode and think, oh, there we were. It's not like Emily Feldman's new or anything to the scene, but it is. I really think that there's a real magic there that is. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next amount of time. The Best We Could, A Family Tragedy, premiered off-Broadway at the Manhattan Theater Club in 2023. I can't tell for sure, but I believe this project began earlier than that, actually back around the time of the pandemic as a collaboration and commission that then got obviously shut down for a period of time by the pandemic and was sort of revitalized in 2023. Rave reviews. It received great reviews at the Manhattan Theater Club. It goes on. There's a whole bunch of productions, many of them more recent. 2025, Actors Reading Collective in San Francisco, the Iowa Falls Community Theater, Theater Kapow in New Hampshire, cool name. In March 2026, so that is, this month as of the recording of this episode. It's in your theater in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and it's at the Whitefish Theater Company in Montana. And then, if you are looking for a place to see it, looking ahead, September 2026, it is going to be at the Camelot Theater Company in Oregon, and November 2026, it will be at the Harbinger Theater Company in Albany, New York. The Best We Could received the Edgerton Foundation New Play Award, support from the Tao Foundation, and was featured on the 2019 Kilroy's list.
Excellent. So yeah, exciting to see it kind of getting so many productions around. I'm like kind of trying to pay attention.
Obviously, hugely producible, right? Like,
yeah.
4 or 5, I forget, 5, I think. 5 yep. Cast members, and deliberately no set.
Yeah.
No theater technology. When it was published by Concord, I've not actually seen this done before. This was new to me. Concord put out this series of interviews with Emily about the play, as like marketing for people to do the play. It was published by Concord. interviews with Emily about it, and that is one of the questions that was part of the interview, which made it a little bit clear that it was kind of a marketing thing. It was like, why should theaters do this?
Sure.
And I mean, one of the points that I'm sure her people at Concord told her to say, but is also true, is that it's really low tech. I mean, this is a lights up, lights down, couple of stools kind of play deliberately.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's like opportunity for design to be brought to it, but like, yeah, I agree that like it really is just like, you know, do the play with what you got sort of energy. So excited for the conversation today, excited to get into some of that theatricality. I'm gonna summarize this play, but this is one of those plays that I'll do. Yeah. This is one of those plays that I'll do the thing at the beginning where I'm like, if you want to experience the slow reveal of information that this play is so masterful about, this kind of slow way that we slowly learn things about these characters and their history, read the play or go see the play, and pay no attention to my poorly done summary of the play, because I'm gonna just like take us through on a through line, and this play does a great job of moving back and forth through time really interestingly, revealing things about the characters and slow burning information.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly good luck on the overall narrative and story of the play. This is a play that has a narrative through line, but also jumps around in time and space deliberately, kind of all over the place. And that's, of course, really enticing to me, not to pump my own dissertation, but my dissertation is on these kinds of supernatural, weird bends in time and space and memory. So absolutely fascinating. I love this stuff. A couple of things that maybe we want to say before we dive into the story. The first of them is we don't typically do this, but it feels right in this conversation. New enough play and the way the play works. This conversation is going to have a fairly major spoiler.
Yeah.
In it. There's something that happens in this play, which if you want to experience the play by reading it, you can purchase a copy from Concord or from, Amazon or wherever and read it. It's a fabulous read. Or if you have a chance to see it. Anyway, if you want to experience the play whole and new, honestly, we don't typically say this. You may want to skip this conversation for now.
Right, absolutely, because it definitely influences the early part. Like if you know the end of the play,
once you know, you look back at it.
Right, yeah. But as you're reading through it, it is very, very well obscured. And so it certainly is a reveal that has some import for looking back, but maybe isn't in the conversation early in the play.
Right. And so maybe as a way to introduce that, the thing that is worthwhile to say about this play, and we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, and this is also we are not like geniuses who mined this. This is publicly available in all of the material around the play, other people writing about the play. This play is, I mean, loosely, but specifically based on Death of a Salesman. It is, it's a sort of a combination of Our Town, Thorton Wilder's Our Town, which I'm sure Jackson will talk about, and the way that it's from that. But the story itself is pretty specifically drawn from Death of a Salesman. It's about an older fellow who is kind of being left behind by his field, who, and now we get to the spoiler part, this is your moment, pause, or there's no real way to skip because we'll talk about it again later.
Yeah, we're
going
to talk
about it. If you
about
don't want to know,
right.
Who you learn late in the play, part of the reason why he's being left behind is a personal failing on his part. And I'll let Jackson describe it in the course of the narrative, but late in the play it is revealed that he has done something which has contributed to where he is at in his own life. And the revelation of that thing in this play, and now, again, this is the major spoiler, so just one more time to say, and then we're on. And this is also a moment for a content warning.
Yeah.
This play has, as its conclusion, a suicide. And so we will talk about suicide in the course of this conversation. If that's not something that you are interested in hearing today, you might check out one of our many other fabulous conversations about plays that do not have that involved in any way. But that is going to be part of this conversation. Again, once you knew that it was based on Death of a Salesman, presumably that is no longer a surprise to you, because that is, of course, how Death of a Salesman ends. sort of, kind of. I think there's maybe some question about it at the end of Salesman, but
yeah.
not really. And so that's also the way that this play concludes. It is called a family tragedy. There's a great interview with Emily where she says, technically, by Aristotle's definition, it is a tragedy, but she calls this play a tragedy that makes you laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Laughter is certainly a vital part of this play, as this family kind of slowly teases out information from each other. Okay, I'm gonna do just the fastest version of this summary that I possibly can. That's my goal going into this. But I'm not gonna start fast, because one of the coolest characters, not the coolest characters, a cool character in this play hits us right away at the top of the play.
Coolest character. No, you were not wrong about that.
So right away at the top of the play, we have a live start, right? Like, as the house lights are up walks the character Maps. And Maps is not really named as Maps, at least initially. Kind of has stage manager energy. Comes out onto the stage and like starts talking to the audience and saying, okay, we're going to start the show, turn off your phones, etc., all that, and slowly begins to introduce the cast to us, and kind of set the scene, a role that Maps will play throughout this play, in addition to playing a number of the other characters who are not the kind of other four, we'll say, quote, main characters of this play. But that kind of ties in a little bit what Jacob already teased, this kind of Thorton Wilder-esque sort of stage manager character / narrator / person who sets the scene and reads out some like stage directions occasionally to kind of put us into a place and engage the actors with the audience.
If I may, let me just quote Emily Feldman, since we're on it right now. This is what Emily Feldman says about the character of Maps. She says, I completely stole this idea from Thorton Wilder.
Yeah.
I always wanted to write a play with a stage manager character. I decided that my version of a stage manager character would have authorial authority, like those Wilder characters, but I would also offer an actress a tour de force role, and she would play an essential part in shaping the plot in a surprising scene near the end of the play.
Yeah. And that's certainly the way Map shows up. Also has a great character name, especially in association with the road trip, and the reading off of locations, like very, very like, you know, kind of your both like Atlas maps, but also like Google Maps. So there's lots of great levels in there. So Maps introduces the play and introduces us to this family. This family is Lou, Peg, and Ella. Lou and Peg are the parents, and Ella is the daughter. And the kind of previous events of this play that I'll talk about as far as the summary goes is Lou has lost his job as a professor. We don't know why at the beginning of the play. And he's like struggling to find a replacement job. That's kind of a little bit further back, but the like main inciting incident for this play is that the family dog has died. The kind of reason why we go on this road trip is because the family dog has died. They've found a new dog that they want to adopt, and it's in Wisconsin. And so Peg encourages Lou to go fly out to California to pick up Ella and go on a road trip across the country, because Peg says Ella needs to get to New York to talk to a publishing house and he needs to drive to Wisconsin, so you might as well all do it together. Ulterior motive of Peg is like trying to get Lou out of the house, trying to get Lou and Ella connected, and trying to like help the situation of this unemployment. Because along the way we also meet Mark. Mark is in Denver and along the road trip route, and Mark is one of the people that Lou is trying to get to help him get a new job.
Yeah, the road trip takes them from LA to the Grand Canyon, up through Denver to Mount Rushmore, and then across to Wisconsin. So it's certainly made to be an experience and not just like the most straightforward path to get anywhere. I will also say, I think that Lou's a biomedical researcher, a cancer researcher, apparently was prominent in the field for a while. And the unemployment seems to have gone on for some time.
Quite a while.
He's tried to get a job at many different places, and there's this repeating refrain about how everybody likes him. He's always at the top of the list. They always think he's the most qualified candidate, and they always pick someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and he's kind of getting down to the spot where he's like, I just need basically an office for me to finish my paper and a regular paycheck, and that's kind of what I need. He keeps trying to go after Mark, who's like this old friend, this old connection in Denver, who's he's trying to like get a connection with and get a good word put in, etc. And what is slowly
and Mark's
teased
research firm has a job open that becomes a centerpiece of the play. That he's like the head of a lab, and they have a job. It's kind of an entry-level job, but still Lou is interested. And one of the plot points of the play is that Lou really wants Mark to essentially get him this job.
Yeah, and we learn through a series of flashbacks back in time and things like that of the friendship that Mark and Lou have. They have friendship going way back to like a time that they lived very near to each other before Mark moved out to Denver, and so there is this kind of like old friendship between them, even as Mark seems to kind of dance aside or decide not to, or obfuscate, or like try to figure out some ways to say that he's not gonna he doesn't leap to help Lou land this job. It's certainly not a I'll get you this job, bud. It's a little bit more complicated than that as they continue on. Along the way, we find out a lot more about Ella as well. Ella is recently separated from her partner, her girlfriend, who is they're kind of going through a breakup right now, and she's like wanting to get out of state anyway to kind of miss the moment where she's moving out of the house. And she also is a writer. She's introduced by Maps as like someone who has quit everything that she has done, which is kind of rude. But was a ballet dancer, was a teacher, was a dancer in another company, is now trying to do some writing. We also slowly learn, again, this is another revelation that comes late in the play and is delightful, but that she is in fact doesn't have an interview with a publisher in New York. That she was turned down for this kid's book that was all about the kind of empowerment of quitting, and how sometimes to quit is the most empowering thing that you can do. And you can imagine that maybe that doesn't go over well with some publishing houses, despite that there's perhaps an empowering message in there. I don't read it
as bad an idea as the other characters do, honestly. Now, I think, she gives a whole monologue about how it relates to consumerist culture and anti-capitalist theory. That maybe sounds a little heavy-handed, but the idea of a book on, being okay with giving up on something, that's not that bad of an idea.
yeah, it could be pretty good. So all along the way, we're getting lots of flashbacks. We're getting lots of different scenes. We're getting more and more about these characters as information is slowly coming out. The last piece of the puzzle, though, like the kind of like last chunk of the narrative that we get pretty late in the play, is kind of what we already sort of warned about early on. We learn that through a series of flashbacks, but also scenes with Peg and another character, Adele, played by Maps, that Lou didn't just lose his job sort of amorphously, but rather as a result of some sexual harassment claims that were made against him. Around this character Adele, that he was at a party and he touched her inappropriately, and so he was dismissed from multiple times, that she's kept a list of all the times, and so he was dismissed from his role, which comes out again once they get all the way to New York. Ella actually flies back to Denver and confronts Mark about why he won't help, and that's one of the reason Mark brings up is like, in addition to the fact that we can hire just like the sort of nepotistic for me to say like my buddy gets the job when there's many qualified younger candidates.
I know we're sort of intertwining narrative and analysis here a little bit, but that scene where Ella flies to Denver to talk with Mark about why he didn't get her father the job, and Mark goes on this spiel about like, well, what did you want me to do? We have this great young candidate. How would it look to this candidate if I got my old friend from college the job just because we're friends? And it's obviously much longer than that. And Ella keeps interrupting with like, yeah, okay, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about my dad. Yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about my dad. And I love that scene because I think it's such a poignant, like, we all want our family to like receive the benefits, right? But we also can see from the other side like why that would be inappropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, it's a fascinating repetition based scene. There's a lot of scenes that have this kind of repetition in it, and I think it kind of lands that point home about the complicatedness of like a stance, and then like that stance being applied to family, and the way that family or friends, and like trying to figure out the way through
And
that.
Ella, all along, it's also kind of a play that has like multi generations. Like Ella's the young character, all the other characters are these kind of older, near retirement people, and so they have a lot of conversations of like different sort of that, like at a dinner at one point while they're traveling. Mark and Lou, Ella's father, and then Mark's wife, Karen, they talk about a different person who was dismissed for sexual harassment claims and how they're all kind of like, people should just kind of get over it. That stuff just happens. It was it was inappropriate, but it was just a joke. We shouldn't run off, get people canceled, stuff like that. And Ella's obviously pushing back quite a bit on that. So Ella is sort of established as this character that obviously would think, if she learned that somebody had gotten their old college buddy a job over a much better, much more qualified young female candidate, that would be inappropriate, as it obviously would, but not when it's her dad, right? And so that's the complicated personal, professional, sort of social things. And then at the end of that conversation is where Mark reveals the sexual harassment claim against her father. Again, that's just a lovely reference back to Death of a Salesman, where Biff, in order to learn about his father's affair, also has to travel away from home to do it. So there's great little tiebacks and allusions to the plot of Death of a Salesman. She doesn't just learn it; she has to travel to go get that information and then come home with it.
Yeah, and she eventually she flies there, and then eventually like reconfronts her dad again with this information. All the while, Peg has also kind of found her way to this information, perhaps through run-ins with Adele at Zumba class.
She certainly senses that something happened with Adele. She doesn't know what.
Yeah. Yep. And this leads to Lou having a confrontation with Adele. He kind of harasses her again, tracks her down to the Zumba class, and tries to get help with his paper again that he's trying to write. And all the while Adele is saying no and consistently saying no, trying to get back to her Zumba class. And this all sort of like culminates in various levels of confrontation, leading to Lou out on a walk with his new dog that he's gotten, and a pretty stunning scene that I'm not going to talk a ton about here because I think I want to talk about it in analysis zone. But a pretty stunning scene with Maps, where you kind of see him like trying to use every tool that he's used to survive all along, but Maps uses it like in synchronicity with him, and speaks a number of lines in unison with him, and you kind of get this like spinning out of control, like all the tools that I've been using to try to survive in this world this whole time is falling apart, and kind of it's not working anymore for me to use these tools. This leads to a pretty kind of directly after that walk with the dog, meeting this stranger on the road scene. Maps narrates us through Lou going about the process of using the dog leash to kill himself. And that is slowly revealed again in kind of a meta level to Ella. All the characters are kind of present in this scene as Maps slowly narrates it.
Ella kind of pushes back against Maps in Maps' role as the stage manager. Like, no, that can't happen next. Let's end this play a different way. Let's end it as a comedy. And then she uses the old Aristotle definition of a comedy, right? I'm making an inference there, but she says, let's make it a comedy. Let's end it on a wedding. I'll marry anybody you want. And all throughout the play, her parents have talked about how she's just broken up with her girlfriend, how she's the play doesn't give her a particular age. It does, but Emily says that you can cast her at various ages. But at the very minimum, there is this idea that she doesn't have a lot of time left if she wants to have kids, which her parents want her to. So that's a kind of a running thing throughout the play. And now at the end of the play, she says, I'll marry anybody you want me to marry. Let's end the play that way instead of this way. A very smart, I think, reference back to that interview about it being an Aristotelian tragedy versus comedy.
Yeah. And then it's a very short denouement. After that, there's this kind of bargaining that Ella does with Maps. Maps invites Lou to leave the stage to go out to the garage and assumedly continue with what Maps has narrated for him. And that's very quickly the end of the play. We have a scene, a repetition of another repetitious line. The play opens with this kind of repeated line from Peg to Ella: "Are you sitting down? I have news to tell you. Are you sitting down? Are you sitting down?" And she winds up telling her that the dog died. Ella thinks her dad died. But at the end of the play, the last lines of Peg to Ella are you sitting down? And Maps takes the lights out on the play, and the play ends. So yeah, that's was not short, but here we are.
Well, as usual, we end up talking as we describe it. It's just so useful to pin onto things in the course of the narrative, and the play. I mean, so again, let's just say the obvious things out loud. The stage manager character from Thorton Wilder's Our Town, that kind of role. This is a character who tells other actors in the play what to do. I mean, you go do this, go visit Mount Rushmore, go to Denver, fly back to Denver to visit Mars. She describes for the characters what they are doing in the moment, and then also takes on all these other various roles throughout the play. The Mark's wife Karen, some various people with dogs on walks, Adele, a police officer at one point when they get pulled over. I mean, really delightful. And then this very particular retelling of A Death of a Salesman, which is, I mean, as much of an American myth. And I don't mean that to imply that it's fake or bad or anything, but I mean like one of the pillar myths of our society has become Death of a Salesman, right? And in the same way that like the Grapes of Wrath is, in the same way the East of Eden is, right? Is the Death of a Salesman is a cultural, iconic story about an older gentleman, typically a white gentleman, not always, but typically, near the end of his life, who wants to rely on the connection, not the end of his life, his end of his career, who wants to rely on the connections that he believes he's made throughout his career to sustain his career, even despite his limitations in his ability to continue. And both Willy Loman and Lou are these like, I talk to everybody well, I'm good with everyone, I know how to talk, to shake hands. And that becomes a repeating theme for Lou throughout the play, is this idea that I can talk to anyone. And I think one of the interesting things that happens in this play is that question becomes something that we sort of scrutinize, because we see Lou have many conversations, and a lot of them are with young women. And this is not really said aloud. I think you infer it once you learn what happened that got him fired from his previous job. But he has these conversations that are essentially like one-sided, not one-sided, they're non-consensual. And I just mean in the sense that Lou pulls up on these strangers and just continues to drive the conversation. At one point while they're traveling across the country, they find this woman, I think it's at the Grand Canyon, who has a dog. And of course they're traveling to get a dog. So Lou gets out to talk to her and kind of keeps the conversation going and going and going. And at one point like asks for her email address. At a later point, they're visiting Lou's original hometown, I think, or maybe I think it's the town that he and Peggy first lived in, where they bought their first house and where they had their kids. Yeah, right. And he pulls up on this woman jogging in the neighborhood and tries to tell her all about how they used to live there and the trees. And the woman's obviously very uncomfortable. And it all sort of pinions down to this conversation where he is literally physically forcing Adele to talk to him at the Zoom class, to the point of grabbing her and forcing her to stay there. And this question about like this kind of mythic American figure of this older white gentleman who talks to everyone well, or who believes he talks to everyone well, right?
Right. Yeah, that like he can talk his way into anything, and that as a result of these connections and these opportunities, things will happen. And what is expected to happen changes based on who he's talking to. And I think yeah, each of these scenes that are played kind of show him trying to use that tool. The other interesting one is they're pulled over. And I feel like when they're pulled over is one of the first times in the play that you see some of the, maybe not the first times, it's a moment in the play that you see some of the cracks starting to form in Lou, where he's pulled over. They're pulled over on the side of the road, and a police officer comes up, and she kind of asks for license and registration. It turns out they're using Ella's car, and Ella doesn't have registration in the car. Spoilers, not spoilers, confession, I don't have registration in the car.
Just
So,
what?
I know. So
Okay, the first thing that you need to do after we wrap this conversation, not to play the Lou role here, get your registration in your car.
No, that's fine. But Lou freaks out about this, right? Kind of it's one of the first times that he yells in the play, and a recurring theme, all caps in the script. A recurring theme is him saying, "I'm not yelling, but if I was yelling, I'd be justified in doing so." And you start to see some of these the breakdown of what happens when things don't quite go exactly the way he was hoping to in an interaction. And that sort of leads to eventually seeing there's a return of yelling later on, and again later on he physically restrains Adele from leaving the conversation at one point. So yeah, I think all those scenes kind of opinion or funnel down towards what is kind of going on with him as he tries to
there's
interact.
this idea, right? And it's said early in the play, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And there's this figure, this person. And again, the play asks the question, well, what happens if this person is someone you know and love? But there is this this figure, again, this kind of American mythic figure of somebody that is well liked by everybody. Willie Loman, of course, is that figure, that original figure. And somebody that believes they have all these relationships and these friends all over the country that will be there for them, that will support them, that will make it work for them. And that they believe their relationships are the things that will sustain them. And of course, in Death of a Salesman and in this play, you learn that those relationships are not what you thought they were, what they thought they were. And what I really love about this play is, again, I mentioned during your summary, that conversation that Ella has with Mark, where Mark really explicitly questions that idea. Do you really want, what you're asking me to do is to give your father the job over a better candidate simply because we have a relationship. Right. Is that actually how we want our society to operate? And it's kind of a generational thing, right? There's the jokes on social media all the time where our parents and older generation are well, just go shake hands with the boss at the company and give them your resume. They'll appreciate that you looked them in the eye and called them for real. This idea that relationships are more important than the work product or than your skills or than your resume or CV. There's obviously some truth to that and some not truth to that. But I really like that this play not only questions in the way that Death of a Salesman does Willie Loman's sense of those relationships, because Lou's sense of those relationships clearly is not correct either. But also this play says do we really want the world to work like that? Or just because you're friends with somebody, you get any job you want? What if you're the candidate that gets passed over for somebody else's good friend?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this play certainly interrogates that question, right? Of is this actually the way we want the world to work? I was thinking,
which is an American myth idea, right? We should get jobs based on our relationships.
I think that's another, not to make this a conversation completely about the connection to Death of a Salesman, but the connections of Death of a Salesman. A lot of the small talk in Death of a Salesman has to do with this myth of rural simplicity. Willie Loman keeps talking about, just if only we can go back to the way things used to be, etc. That's kind of countryside sort of living, sort of
when they bought the house in Willie Loman and Linda's past, it used to be on the very outer edge of this metropolis, and now there's apartment buildings that are blocking out the sun and things. Right.
And I don't think we don't really get rural simplicity in this play. I think though the myth that
you get though the rural simplicity of the road trip, right? They're out in America in the national parks,
and they're planting trees. They go back to the old neighborhood and they kind of look at the trees that grew, etc.
They see sort of historical cultural icons of America, right? The Grand Canyon and Mount Rushmore. So there's a different kind of like mythic investigation about history and society.
For sure. The small talk, though, is kind of around this myth of security.
Yes.
What Lou keeps talking about is like this myth of fiscal security. Just invest in this way, invest in these bonds, and you have this different tiers of bonds. This is like road trip talk that he's having with Ella, and he's like trying to get her to set up that way. There's this myth of familial security. He tries to like communicate that time is running out to have a kid, and you should like think about this and these sorts of things, and like what you want from that, and what sort of job that you want to support the financial and family security that you want. And then
so just like as an example of that, the thing he says over and over, the repeated, and there's a lot, again, as you said, there's so much repetition in the play, which I just love. But one of the things that Lou says over and over is this phrase, it's pretty simple. So at various times throughout the play, he starts a little piece of advice. He'll say, you know what? It's pretty simple. And then here's one. You can get real sophisticated about it, but at the end of the day, there are only two things to invest in, stocks and bonds, okay? And he goes on and has an overly simplistic description of how stocks and bonds work.
Yeah, yep. And then what we've already been talking about, this myth of connection security, of like, this person will do this for me if I have talked to them in this particular way, and this sort of like belief that it's predictable that you can have these sorts of connections that will bring about what you want. In fact, the way that he talks about Ella getting a job is like, have your friends submit your resume to the boss for you, and once enough of your friends do that,
and like she's going to New York in his mind, right? Now we learned later that this was a lie Peggy told him. But in his mind, the reason they're road tripping is because she's going to New York to meet a publisher for her book, right?
Right.
And the advice that he constantly gives her is that she should print off copies of her resume to bring with her to this meeting about publishing her book. Like a situation in which a resume is useless. and he keeps hounding her about the fact that she doesn't have some college group that she was a part of. I can't remember. It's a Greek phrase that some college group that she was a part of that she doesn't have on her resume. And she keeps saying over and over, nobody cares about that. Keeps saying, well, you don't know what people care about. Maybe somebody will see it, and that will be a connection, and the connection will get you a job.
Yeah.
So there are these stories that I think probably like your and my generation, Jackson, have been told about the way security and connections and jobs work. And the play certainly puts those forefront by sticking Lou and Ella in a car together for days and days and days. All of this advice, this perspectives keeps sort of pouring out.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And it's kind of constantly interrogated and kind of brought into relief with the realities of like the flashback scenes or the slow revealing of how Lou has been harassing his secretary or his coworker. So I think those that again, another like slow boil of this mythos that is being interrogated, which again like lands on this. I don't know. We're coming down close to the end of our time, and there's so much more that we could talk about this play. We'll probably go a little bit long today. This last scene with Maps, where he meets Maps on the road. I think because Maps has played all of these other secondary characters, we'll call them, all these kind of random people that they meet that he has interactions with. That last scene that kind of leads to these unison lines that they like end up talking at the same time as each other in this sort of almost like Black Mirror kind of Twilight Zone sort of a way, is like a fascinating culmination of these kind of myths that he's been working with.
Well, and this very specific idea that he keeps repeating, right? That he can talk to anyone. He's great at talking. He's great at interviewing. People like to talk to him, which again is poked at throughout the play, including like after Mark asks him to, not ask him, after Lou asks Mark to help him get this job at Mark's lab, and Mark says, sure, you send in your application materials, you'll have to go through the process, but I'll speak up for you, things like that. They have a call later on where they're talking about the interview, and Mark's like, why did you ask the interviewer how old she was?
Yeah.
You can't do that. And Lou was like, well, she was disrespecting me. She said she had a hard out at 2. And then when 2 o'clock came, she rushed me off the phone. It's like she hadn't even read my CV. All these things. And you're like, oh, well, apparently you weren't able to talk to that person super well, you know? So that it's this question that's asked throughout the play. And certainly how you directed the scenes where Lou talks to all those various people that aren't the four main characters, all the characters that Maps plays, would influence how that is being investigated in the course of the play. But so as you say, at the end of the play, Lou essentially stalks Adele to her Zumba class, has an encounter where he's trying to get her, I think essentially to speak up for him and get rid of this stain on his reputation by apologizing, but he does it in a obviously horrible way. I mean, just terrible. And then he takes the dog for a walk, and this is the stage direction. Maps approaches. She's just Maps, not another specific character. She's every friend and neighbor Lou's ever had. And they sit on this park bench and they kind of have this amalgam conversation. That's little bits and phrases of the kinds of small talk conversations that you have with the people that you live in your neighborhood and know. It becomes pretty clear that they're not one person. Like at one point, Lou says, I think we went to the same, and then Maps and Lou say summer camp. Lou says, I think our kids were on the same. Maps and Lou say swim team. Lou says, I think you used to be my, Maps and Lou say dentist. Lou, you've known me a long time, right? Maps, of course. Lou, you remember me when I was a little boy, right? Maps, of course. So they have this, it's like a meta conversation that, I don't know, is it a fantasy of the kinds of conversations Lou believes that he has, right? He's good at talking to people. Is it, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's sort of like a feeling that you get from that scene. And then like there's sort of the question of like who necessarily is Maps, because like eventually you could kind of, in this last scene, you could kind of think of Maps as like some sort of internal monologue, and so like the imagined conversation might be a way to go with that, especially as Maps sort of narrates Lou's end. And you kind of get maybe a glimpse into the inside of Lou's mind as it sort of unravels around this. But yeah, I don't like that is sort of an interesting scene that is sort of like when you're watching it, it's so evocative and kind of wrecks you that like the reality of like this one person maybe being all these conversations is kind of secondary to me as I watch it.
Yeah, I don't. It's clear that it's not a realistic conversation.
Yeah.
And I also think it's clear to me, at least in the reading, that it is positive. You know, that Lou actually in this conversation is a really talented conversationalist. And I don't know that is necessarily true in some of the other scenes of the play. So that makes me wonder about its reality. I don't know. It's part of this ongoing thing that once Ella confronts him about his sexual abuse or harassment of Adele, that the end of the play, it's part of this repeated sequence where he keeps taking the dog for a walk, even though the dog's already had a walk. So he's constantly out walking the dog. And is this maybe the beginning of kind of a fracturing where he is doing this thing over and over and over again and thinks he's having all these conversations? And then, it's notable, as soon as Maps leaves as that kind of amalgam character, Lou says to the dog, see, Candy, wherever I go, I end up talking to somebody. I had a way of just talking to people. That is a change in tense.
Yeah.
Throughout the play, he says, I have a way of talking to people. Now I had a way of talking to people. Is it memory? In one of this play's other many references to Death of a Salesman is the way that it incorporates memory into the present. Obviously, in Death of a Salesman, one of the features is that Willy Loman, just as he is, an old man dressed as, and it will turn into a scene from his past where his young boys will be there. He's still his old self, but they're his young boys, at least as you experience the scene visually. And that kind of confusing of past and present, then and now, happens throughout this play as well. And so what is this scene with Maps? Is it really happening here in the present with the dog? Is this a different dog, from before? His old dog that didn't die? Is this Candy, the new dog that he's got? Is this a memory? Is this something that never happens? whatever it is, it ends with, I had a way of talking to people.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think the other piece that is certainly compounding into this conversation is the amount of rejections he's gotten, because this scene also comes right on the tail of him having heard that he didn't get the job. And
that's what causes Ella to fly to Denver and confront Mark about him not getting the job. So and then she comes back and she tells them what she knows, and then he goes and hunts down Adele.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. There's so many pieces of this play. Anything else that like needs to be said before we wrap up?
We ended up talking about Lou the whole play instead of Ella, which is probably our whole conversation, which is probably a fault on our part. Ella is, again, and of the play's many references to Death of the Salesman, has a lot in common with Biff, obviously, not only in the one that discovers the sexual harassment thing, or in Willie Loman's case, the affair, but also, like, Ella is really just as lost as Lou. Like, lost in what is next, lost in the promises that were made by a society that she doesn't know that are, going to be there and supporting her anymore. Also lives in this kind of past, present, then and now situation. It's similar to the way that Biff has that whole great monologue about how he doesn't want to be this perfect image of what Willie Loman wants him to be, that he wants to just work out on I think it's a ranch in Death of a Salesman. Ella, one of her things is about this idea that she's learning about herself, that she's not competitive, that she doesn't want to like have to really strive hard. Like she wants to be comfortable and settled. And that's maybe sounding worse than I mean it to sound, but it's the idea that she brings to her father is that she's not competitive. She doesn't have a competitive drive. And that is very comparable to what Biff is sort of discovering. And both Willie Loman and Lou really reject that in their kid. They think they're wrong about that assessment of themselves.
Yeah, she kind of is. I like the comparison to Biff. I like as well, like, as long as we're in the tragic hero and the tragedy sort of things, also some energy of Antigone. Like she has this sort of like the one to whom the air quotes tragic hero, the one who will succumb to tragedy, is trying to bounce their ideas off of, and being met with the foil to them, right? The way that their assumptions or their myths don't work. And a lot of times that is a child. A lot of times that is some degree of the one whom they have poured their life into in some way, or their narrative is that they've poured their life into in some way. And the child has a different perspective, a new perspective, a way that the myth that the hero isn't learning or is trying to continue to live out doesn't work. And I think Ella has that slow resistance to it in the same breath that she also is trying to figure out a way to help her dad on this trip and help him like process some things. It's a wild revelation at the end that she discovers from Peg that Peg lied and said that they were going to a publishers meeting in New York. And
that's really the thing that's really important about that lie, especially to set up what happens at the end of the play, is that Peg says, like, he won't leave the house, he won't get out of bed. There is some instability suggested in this idea, and then again, another great reference to Death of a Salesman. Peggy has this great monologue about how she didn't want him to drive across the country to get the dog alone, because she's afraid of the road, afraid of the lines on the road. Cars are death machines. All of that language is very, very reminiscent of Willie Loman talking about the lines on the road as he's driving all over the country as a traveling salesman. And so, but Lou won't let Ella just take the time off work to drive with him. He doesn't want his kid to make that kind of sacrifice for him. So she has to invent this justification for Lou to fly out and make the drive with Ella. So, there are certainly, in order to make the end of the play part of the story instead of a twist at the end, you have to mine those kinds of moments, including, the play opens with Ella getting a phone call from her mother, believing that the news she's about to get is that her father has died.
Right.
Believing that very deeply to the point of it causing her a great deal of upsetness. And then her mother reveals, oh, it's just the dog. I don't mean just the dog, but that it's the dog, not the father.
Yeah.
And so, there's all kinds, you have to find those the moments that reveal the growing instability.
Yeah, absolutely. And what another, like, just again to marvel at the form of this play, another great foreshadowing event at this that you get at the start of the play, that there's this, like, this thought that the father has died, and in fact he hasn't, and much later in the play that does come to bear. Many other things we could talk about, many other ways to keep chatting about this play. Alas, we are down to the end of our particular time on this episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to stop at the end of this episode. We'd love to keep chatting about this play with all of you. You can find us on the socials that we're on at the username at NoScriptPodcast. We also have a Gmail, noscriptpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on any of those sites. We'd love to keep talking about the best we could with you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, any other conversations in our season, if you're looking forward to our themed month, all we ask is that you recommend us to your family, your friends, anybody you know that likes conversations about theater, about writing, about themes, about, allusions back to great works of literature. That's what this conversation was mostly about. Just let people know about us. That's how the podcast grows. They can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all the places you get your podcast, including Facebook, where they can just like our Facebook page. A link appears every Monday when we publish the new episode. They click and play from there. We'll be back next Monday with another great conversation about another great script. Until then, I'm Jacob here with Jackson. This has been No Script, the podcast.